Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dinkoy, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert, coming to you with Tuesday Tea Time with Chala. Today's topic is 5 PowerPoint presentation mistakes you're making. My goodness, let me take another sip. I tried to cool this one down before. We are constantly working with clients on their PowerPoints. Of course, most of the PowerPoint presentations that we're working on are to convince, to persuade, to sell, really. And so a lot of my comments are going to be coming from that perspective. And if you remember, I used to be on the receiving end of PowerPoint presentations to death for 18 years, where I was presented by various vendors. I mean, I saw other, managers' presentations. And so in each case, whether you're on the buying side or the selling side, or you're doing it internally, the reason why you're doing a PowerPoint presentation is to be able to summarize visually your points and whatever it is that you're trying to get across and to persuade. So even when I was presenting to the board, of directors of the company that I used to work at, or to the sales reps that I was working with, it was always to not just inform, but also to persuade and to position. So one of the first mistakes that people make, especially in sales PowerPoint presentations, is not thinking about who they're trying to influence. And the most beautiful word in the English language is a person's own name. So starting with you is the biggest PowerPoint presentation mistake that you can make. So always what I do is I often have clients start with the actual, client's problem, product, brand, logo, whatever story, go right in and start about them. Now, if you want to turn that around on its head and start with you, it has to have a story that's what I call a Phoenix Rising story, where you have to relate to the audience. You have to actually be telling a story with PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint has to be, showing visually a very succinct and emotional story of how you overcame the demon that the people in the room are fighting with. So that's mistake number one, is starting with you. And even if you do start with you, it has to be within the context of what the audience wants and what they're suffering from, or what they came to get out of the meeting. Okay. Mistake number two is not setting up their pain. So part of our sales presentations is, what is the pain? Statistic is about the pain. Why is this a pain? Explain it out. And then, what are the consequences of the pain and why existing solutions aren't working? Everything is just stacking about the pain. And if you're not using your PowerPoint presentation to do that, you're missing the boat. You're missing the whole idea of, and no matter whether it's internal or it's actually to do an actual sale, it's always about selling an idea. So remember that even if you're doing non-sales presentations, you're still selling. You're still selling an idea. I sell to my son every time I'm trying to, sell him a new idea on how to do anything. And it always has to start with him, and it has to start with his problems and what problem he has that it would solve. So remember, mistake number two is not setting up their pain in the PowerPoint presentation. Our PowerPoint presentation mistake number three is not using stories to bake in your USP, which is your unique selling proposition, or your positioning, or your super niche, or your unique, whatever it is, that's your differentiator. So we always use stories in the PowerPoint presentation to convey how we've helped the same problem with a similar customer, what the situation was when we came in, how we addressed the issue, what we did, top lines, and then what the results were. And by hearing your stories, the client then concludes, or the audience then concludes, that you are in the position of expertise to be able to help them. All right. And then let's look at mistake number 4 of PowerPoint presentation mistakes is not making it conversational with pauses for audience input. When was the last time you were at, I mean, except for this one, because we don't have a two-way interaction here, and I wish we did, but when was the last time you went to a speaking head webinar, seminar, speech? I mean, I understand that when it's the crowd is too large, or when there's like thousands and thousands of people, that you can't really interact with the audience. And if you do ask questions, it would be like rhetorical questions where masses of people would say yes or no. But in a smaller setting, especially in a sales presentation where you're using a PowerPoint presentation, you have to include questions, you have to include participation, you have to engage, and you have to be able to include those pauses in so that they are not completely checked out. And in fact, this is super, super important now online, you guys. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I've started to do all these masterminds, all these, webinars, presentations. I mean, I used to do them before, but now, I've actually thrown away the PowerPoint presentation. That's how distracting it's gotten. But if you do use them when you are doing it, you have to make sure that you put either, a slide for pause, or a slide with a question on it, or a setup to be able to stop, ask, engage, and then continue. So remember, the most boring PowerPoint presentations are those that just go on and just no stopping for any exchange of information or even checking in with the audience. And of course, the last PowerPoint presentation mistake is not considering the appropriate format. So are you in person? Is this virtual? Is the PowerPoint presentation a leave behind? Some people use PowerPoint presentations as actual proposals. Others use it as actual discussion points. So that's what you have to look at. Okay, what is the content? How long does it have to be? Is it going to be, after the fact, a leave behind, or is it actually something that I'm trying to persuade and engage with, in which case it's going to be much shorter, it's going to be way more emotional, it's going to be driven by a lot of images and stories. So the format is one of the biggest mistakes. Not considering the appropriate format is one of the biggest mistakes that I stop when I work with my clients on their PowerPoint presentations. And I've added a bonus mistake that I find is not practicing your PowerPoint presentation. And I'm not just talking about, the effects and transitioning from slide to slide and not knowing what's happening on the next slide and being caught by surprise and saying, oh, I guess this is what it says. But gosh, those are the worst. And I am so proud that I create every single one of my slides and I know exactly what sequence they're going to go, because I've done them over and over again. And if you don't have enough practice, go get it. That's the one thing nobody can stop or take away from you, unless you're under a time crunch. But even so, practice it on your cat, practice it in the mirror, just practice it, just dry run it. And sometimes I even write in the notes while the slide is up what I'm going to be saying during that time, because practice makes perfect. Unfortunately, nothing has changed about that. So those are my 5. And I'm sorry I interrupt when I'm talking, because I have to drink the Tuesday tea. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be Tuesday tea. So those are the 5 mistakes to stop making when you are doing a PowerPoint presentation. And for those of you who were expecting some sort of technical take on how to actually use the PowerPoint and all the features of the PowerPoint. I mean, I did used to work for Microsoft for a very brief time in history, and I actually did used to present because I was the brand manager for the Office suite. And that's when we used to talk about all the technical details and how even back then, like, I don't know, 20 years ago, how AI was helping to drive some of the features. But this is not what that's about. This is how to not screw up the actual presentation part. And I'm sure you can figure out the mechanics and, the widgets and the gadgets all around the functions of the PowerPoint. It's really more about how to use it. So I hope that was helpful. This was a short one. I am going to meet you again next week. Next week, am I going to be back? Yes, I am, because I'm going to visit my parents in Montreal. God bless them. They're changing their minds about all of our plans every minute by the minute. So before they change their minds again about something important, I'll let you go and I will go and pack, and I will see you here again next week. All the best.